Yo, what's up guys, it's Cozy, and today I'm back with the next Abyss video. The Abyss finally reset, and this time we truly have the new version of it. New enemies, new effects, new characters, new everything. Just like last time, I'm going to talk about the entire Abyss, not just floor 12. I will give you tips and tricks that will help you with your progress in the Abyss, no matter if you're new to the game or a veteran. So without further ado, let us get started. Alright, so first up we have this Reset's Blessing. This one is fairly simple. You get attack and elemental mastery whenever you lose or gain HP. Both can stack up to 3 times and they are counted independently from each other. So it's basically a DPS increase that you don't really need to pay too much attention to. Just make sure to heal your characters or to take some damage from time to time. When it comes to your enemies, for the first time we have the mecha enemies as well as one of the crabs. They are the basic enemies you can find out in the wild while exploring, and for now they are not too dangerous. You also have some hydro enemies and a few helicholes, so pay attention to those, but you already know those, they are our regular enemies, so not a whole lot to talk about there. When it comes to your teams, you can use whatever characters you have. It doesn't really matter for this floor. You can use my teams if you have access to them, or you can build a team that is built around the Leyline Disorder, which by the way increases your vaporized damage by 50%. One thing to keep in mind here, just like I mentioned, there's a cryo shield enemy and a hydro shield enemy for this floor. So make sure that you bring characters that can break those shields. Other than that, use whatever you want to use. So, with that out of the way, let us now talk about the chambers in more detail. If you are only interested in floor 12, you can skip ahead by using the timestamps down below. But if you are interested or need help with the other floors, then here you go. For floor 9 chamber 1, we have the usual enemies. They are spread throughout the room, and as such, animal characters are really helpful here. You can bring Khazor, Venti, Sulcros or Lynette, whoever you have. You can also do it without them, but it makes it a lot easier. When it comes to the second half of Chamber 1, we have one enemy that is kinda dangerous, and that is a big boy mecha during the second enemy wave. Try to learn his patterns now, because once we get to floor 12, this guy will hit like a truck. In Chamber 2, we have a few cryo shields in the form of those 2 alien looking things and 1 cryo slime. Bring your pyro characters in the chamber and it shouldn't be too much of a challenge. On the other side, it's the same, just this time in the form of 2 pyro crabs, so bring your hydro characters for this one. You also have one of the mecha big boys or weather girl, so learn her patterns now. Once again, it will help you later on. Regarding Chamber 3, we have this big thing in the middle. It will infuse your enemies with hydro, so abuse that by bringing pyro characters for vaporize reactions. And we also have the same thing for the second half, but this time it will infuse your enemies with pyro, so try to bring hydro characters here, right? Other than that, this floor shouldn't be too much of a challenge. Next up we have floor 10. As you can see, I already have 3 stars because I started it and then my internet stopped working. Amazing, right? Anyways, regarding the Leyline Disorders, you do 50% increased damage to opponents affected by hydro, so try to use that to your advantage if you're having problems. When it comes to the enemies, we have 1 Fatui Pyro Shield. Everything else isn't that dangerous, so simply bring either your best teams or build a team around the Leyline Disorder. Keep in mind though that you need 1 hydro character per team if you want to do that. Not to mention that you need 1 hydro character for the Fatui guy. So let us now take a look at the one and I will give you a few tips here and there. For floor 12 chamber 1 we have the Fatui guy, so try to focus him down first. If you're fast enough he won't even bring up his shield. The second half has only some mecha enemies and they die fairly quickly, as you can see. Chamber 2 has a few specters in it that you need to group up if you want a fast run. Or you use characters like Nahida to link them. Or you just completely out DPS them. The second half has a few bishops in it, and once again, like during the last Abyss, try to dodge their attacks. If you get hit by them, it reduces your elemental energy, so less elemental bursts. Chamber 3 has one of the big boy Eremites in it, and if you didn't know it, after killing his pet he gets stunned and takes more damage. Or at least I think he takes more damage, not sure. But he gets stunned for sure. The second half has 2 big ruin guards. Simply DPS them, bring them down as quickly as you can. You can also use your elemental burst for the invincibility window in order to dodge the attacks. Other than that, let us now move on to floor 11. Alright, for floor 11 we have one of the most busted Leyline Disorders I have ever seen. 60% more hydro damage and pyro damage is absolutely insane, so definitely try to build your teams around that. When it comes to your enemies, first we have pyro slimes, then we have cryo slimes. Honestly, I don't think MiHoYo can be any more direct when it comes to the teams I want you to use. In the other chambers it's the same, only the second half of chamber 3 is a little bit different because it has a big boy bishop in it. So try to bring your characters that can apply shields to your team. I actually decided to bring one in the form of Baizu, but let me spoiler you now, when I actually needed it, I didn't apply it. So yeah, extremely 5-head for me. When it comes to the chambers themselves, as you can see during the first one, you need to protect the pylon in the middle. Try to move the attacks of your opponents away from that thing. Also, if you can, try to aggro each opponent so that they attack you instead of the pylon. The same basically applies for the second half of chamber 1. Regarding chamber 2, we have a few crab enemies, 1 pony and eventually 2 big boy helicules. They aren't too dangerous if you manage to dodge their attacks. If you're having problems with them, you're most likely getting hit by them, so try to learn their attack patterns or abuse your elemental burst invincibility. The same applies to the second half of chamber 2. Basically, the entirety of chamber 2 is about dodging correctly. And lastly, chamber 3. The first half isn't really that complicated, just make sure to bring down the 2 samurais at the same time. The second half is where you will be quote-unquote challenged. Dodge the bishop's attacks, do as much damage as you can, and when he does his big boy attack, use your shield. He takes a lot of damage if you do that correctly. If you do all of that, you should get to floor 12 fairly easily, so let us now talk about that one. And as a slight spoiler, for being the first floor 12 of Fontaine, it is quite easy, surprisingly easy actually. For floor 12 we obviously have no ley line disorder, so unfortunately nothing to abuse here. When it comes to the enemies, we have 1 Magokenki for the first half of chamber 1 and a bunch of smaller enemies for the second half. The one you're about to see for chamber 1 was actually my second one, because during the first one I decided to not bring an animal character for the second half of chamber 1, which turned out to be a big mistake. Regarding the Magokenki, maybe it's your first time fighting him in the Abyss or you haven't paid a whole lot of attention to it just yet, the best and easiest way to dodge his heavy attacks is by using your elemental burst. He also has an invincibility window once you get him to around 80% HP, so try to not use your elemental burst during that time. Also, one last tip regarding the Magokenki, eventually he will try to jump away from you. Try to position yourself so that his first jump will always be directed towards the edge of the room, and after that try to keep him there. This will help a lot as you don't need to run after him that much. For the second half, bring your animal character. As you can see, all the Hydro Eidolons are super far away from each other. Grouping them up is more or less essential. The same also applies to the second wave of enemies. Not to mention that we have 1 big boy mecha enemy in here, and if you learned his patterns earlier on, then this guy shouldn't be too much of a challenge. For chamber 2, we first have to face up against a big boy crab. Just like the open world boss, this guy too does not like water of any kind. So if you bring Hydro characters for this one, it makes the fight a lot easier. Try to dodge his attack patterns and do as much damage as you can. This guy is basically a walking punching bag as long as you're able to break his shields. The second half is more or less the same. If you manage to break the shields of those 2 Primus enemies, they get stunned for quite a lot of time. If they start attacking you with their big boy attacks, either dodge them or do the same as me, abuse your elemental burst. This chamber is more or less all about breaking their shields as quickly as you can, and if you do that successfully, they become punching bags for your characters. And finally, chamber 3. The first half has 2 waves of enemies. The first wave has a few Fatui and an Eremite. Once again, kill her pet, stun her and then kill her. As simple as that. Try to kill the Fatui guys first though, because you don't want to deal with their shields. If you're not fast enough for that, simply keep DPSing them, break their shields while cleaving the Eremite. The second wave of enemies is going to test what I mentioned earlier, because this time you have to deal with both the big boy and big girl mecha enemies. They hit hard, they have a lot of HP, so try to stay calm, dodge their attacks and you're good to go. One more thing though, there's also 1 sentry turret. Kill that one ASAP in order to not get frozen. When it comes to the second half of chamber 3, we have one of the new world bosses, the Icewind suit. The mechanics are all the same as doing the world boss, it just has more HP and it hits harder. But you should be able to constantly stick to it like I did by using your dodge and your elemental burst in order to avoid its attacks. As you can see, I only had around 10 seconds left when I completed this one, but I also didn't really use Linny for DPS. So thinking about it, a character like Dia would have probably been better for this fight, or a Raiden team. But I did all of it in 1-1, so switching wasn't really an option. Either way, if you manage to kill the guy, you have completed this version of the Spiral Abyss. I hope this guy was helpful. If you're not getting 9 stars just yet, then believe me, you will get there. It's just a matter of time. Other than that, thanks for watching, leave a like, leave a comment, all of that stuff, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye. One more thing, this is post-edit Vacosi, and I was thinking about one question and maybe you could give me some feedback on that. Right now I'm creating the guides with a heavy focus on how to deal with the flaws and specific enemies within, while giving you basic recommendations when it comes to characters to use. For example, use a Haido character here, a Pyo character there, and an Anemo character here. What I don't tend to do that much right now is to give you specific characters as recommendations. For example, use Rain Shogun with the national team, or use Yula with Rosaria and so on. Or, I don't know, use Kusanali with some of the other characters. The reasoning behind it is, when I started with Genshin and watched guides myself, I always kept thinking, well, all of that is cool, but I am free to play. I don't have a Diluc, I don't have a Mona, my characters are Constellation 0, not Constellation 6, all of that stuff. So my question, do you prefer the guides the way I'm doing them right now, or would you rather have specific characters as recommendations? If you have made it this far, give me an answer to that question down in the comments. It would be helpful, or rather good to know, for future guides. Other than that, have a great day or night wherever you live. Bye bye.